On this episode, I am joined by Melanie Hallas Kirsch. Mel, like me, is a senior antitrust lawyer at a large company. Her practice mirrors mine in many ways, but that's not why I had her on the pod. What I was interested in was something else that we had in common, a curiosity in how technology can improve how we do our work. People say you'll get more audience with conflict, so by that metric, this episode ought to be a flop, because there's very little that Mel says that I don't agree with. But maybe that's the point. Lawyers in different enterprises facing similar challenges and finding similar solutions with AI. But Mel's contributions go well beyond the topic of how tech helps lawyers lawyer. Her thoughts on what AI means for law firms and the relationship between in-house and outside counsel helped clarify for me something that I've sensed without really being able to explain it, which is that AI does not create a conflict or tension between law firms and the clients they represent. It changes things, for sure, but the core value from that relationship persists and will continue to persist, even as corporate legal departments leverage AI to insource more legal work. I really appreciated Mel coming on and speaking so honestly and clearly about her AI journey. It was a great conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. Hi, Mel. Welcome to Version Up.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you. You are a longtime friend, former colleague, and practicing lawyer, which selfishly is my favorite kind of guest to have on the pod. I love talking to lawyers about what they use in their technology stack. And I find that there's often a difference between how in-house lawyers do it versus how law firm lawyers do it. Different job, different challenges, different pressures. You come here today with an in-house perspective, so I thought we could just explore how you're using technology.
Yeah, sounds great. So let me start with all of the views today are my personal views, but I think that I'm a really good example of somebody who, dabbles in tech, but like I can't build a computer or anything, right? So I'm just a lawyer who's sort of evolved with the technology that we have. And so for AI, I think one thing, like you, I started at the Federal Trade Commission and my career has focused on M&A work and transactional work. And we've been using AI-like technology for a really long time, right? In document reviews, technology-assisted review, it's pretty much AI. It's just evolved over time. And so the tools I'm using in my personal life, I dabble in AI a lot. I use ChatGPT and Gemini. And at work, we have tools. We use Harvey, Copilot, and an in-house tool.
Oh, interesting. I look forward to exploring sort of the experiences between those. I also have the opportunity to pilot Harvey and also have the opportunity to use Copilot. So maybe we can compare notes. But before we do that, I love your point about AI light tech. This is one of the themes I've seen emerge as I do the podcast, which is we focus a lot on AI, but there's been a lot of technology and AI-like technology along the way. So what's been different with generative AI? What's been the leap forward that you've seen with Harvey, the Copilot, and other AI-powered tools?
Yeah, for me, I think it is evolving much faster than anything I've seen before. You start to use one tool and then the next day, 5 more pop up. And there might be a feature on that one tool that you got used to using and you were using it because other tools didn't have it, but they're all catching up very quickly. And so right now, I think the two issues that I see, it's almost too much information. And coming from an antitrust lawyer who likes competition, that's a hard thing to say. But there's just so many tools to try. And I personally have been trying to focus on a handful of tools because I can't try everything and get good at everything at the same time.
So yeah, the fact that it feels like things move so fast that the main tools that we see out there keep converging on the same features. Is that helpful? Does that mean you don't have to chase features, or does that allow you to ground yourself in a few tools? Or do you feel like you're missing out because you talk to someone and they tell you about some new tool and you're like, oh, darn, I wish I had that?
Yes, sometimes I do feel like I have a little bit of FOMO when I talk to other people and hear about a new cool tech feature that came out on a AI tool. But at the same time, I have seen that the tools I am focusing on have started to get the same features, which I think is good because they do, in my opinion, generate different outputs. And so I compare my outputs across the tools. I also ground it in comparing first what I would have said the truth or the answer should be, and then I compare it to what I got from the AI tool.
Yeah, that is a little bit of extra work in our day, but my gosh, I find it so critical to level setting and seeing whether I'm actually making progress with AI tools. So I want to focus on that for a second. How do you compare outputs across tools? Is it more like a kind of a subjective gut feel kind of thing, or do you pop in the same prompt at the same moment and compare them like that, or how do you do it?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both for me. One thing that I've been doing ever since I started using AI more than a year ago, and I do think that if we were having this conversation a year ago, it would be very different. I've noticed that a lot more people compared to last July, even in law firms, in-house, have actually used AI now. Last July, that might not have been the case. But ever since I started using AI, I've put a simple factual question in to see how the tools have evolved with their answers. So I do a lot of HSR filings. I know off the top of my head that the HSR threshold is greater than $133.9 million. And so I have put that in all my tools just as a factual question, personal and work tools to see what it said. Last July, it was really interesting. Some of the tools would give the answer that was the HSR threshold from a year prior, but not let you know that they did not have the facts to tell you that. So if someone looking and putting that prompt in asked what the threshold was, they would have received the wrong threshold. And across the tools now, I've seen that most of them search the web now, so they get the right answer. But the closed systems I've seen have evolved and actually tell you that it does not have information or it has information as of and gives you a date, which I think is really good. In between, I think the tools had said something like, I don't know. And I had read an article that threw people off. But I actually liked that it said, I don't know, because to me, it seemed more of a real answer and you had to go search for the facts.
Yeah, so it's like your senior level kind of judgment expertise is the check that you use to tell whether an output is suspect or not. Does that mean that we as more senior level lawyers have this advantage in how we use these tools versus someone who's more junior because we have that kind of insight or that intuition from years of practice?
I think right now, yes. And the reason is I do think AI can't do and should not do judgment. AI doesn't have the experience you have. It doesn't have the client relationship that you have. And all of that risk tolerance, judgment experience goes into how I answer questions that I receive. And the tool can't do that. So I think a junior lawyer who maybe hasn't done hundreds of mergers analyses, they might not pick up that something is incorrect because the tool is citing to something. I had an example one time where I was trying to do an HSR reportability analysis, and I remembered an informal opinion, and I was trying to figure out which opinion it was. So I asked the tool, and it gave me the answer I wanted and cited all these opinions. But when I went to the opinion, not one of the opinions said what it told me the answer was. And I'm not sure that a junior lawyer would have picked that up if they didn't go and check and then actually read all the opinion.
Yeah, it makes me think that there's really a premium around educating legal users about what AI tools can and cannot do before you allow them to start using them, right? It's not like Word 365 training, which we've got reminded about every year. And most of us at law firms, at least, just sort of skipped because, we felt the pressure to keep the billable hours going. It's not like that because it's really embedded in your day-to-day practice. It requires a level of acumen and sophistication about the tool that I think might be unprecedented. It is something that, applies in legal practice.
I agree with that. I mean, the two things that I focus on, I think, are education and experimentation, right? So, first, I listen to a lot of podcasts and I read a lot of articles on AI. I talk to a lot of people on AI. Just, you need the education to even understand how to use it and how to use it correctly. And then experimentation. And I think because a more senior level lawyer has experience in the field, I think there's an advantage there. But at the same time, I think a junior lawyer might have an advantage over time because we have to change our mindset, right? You need to talk to the AI tool and you need to question it. And I think that's not something that's ingrained, at least for me, in how to do it. I mean, I talk to it sort of like I'm questioning a more junior person or a law firm if I'm pushing back. But sometimes the way I'm going to say speak to the tool might not be right. So I think junior lawyers who are growing up with this tech as a new thing might learn that quicker than someone who has to sort of relearn how to question it.
I love that when I asked about education, you didn't talk about training. You actually talked about your own efforts to go out and educate yourself through, podcasts, et cetera. I'm curious, is that just a personal preference, or do you think that there's something about this moment or this technology that encourages that kind of self exploration?
I think it's a little bit of both. I really like to learn. And so I have a long commute into the office. So I listen to podcasts a lot. I actually asked my AI tool what podcasts I should learn as a lawyer, learning about AI. And so I've started dabbling in some of those. But at the same time, to me, talking to people or about how they used it is a better use of my time than just watching a training that walks me through, click here, click on the dots, type in this prompt. So I try to do a more useful training that like practical.
Yeah, I think this is such a tough topic, which is how do you get people to change how they do their legal work day to day? And I think we all know that webinars and more Zoom calls are probably not the best option, but at the same time, we're busy, right? And not everyone's going to be motivated to go in their off time and learn about these things. So I'm not sure there's an obvious answer on how to do that. And maybe it's a personalized kind of experience.
I agree. I think something that's been really useful for me is just hearing what other people do and how they do it and running why it worked, why it didn't work, and even running through, I have a prompt every day. I generate 3 emails. One gives me a summary of what I didn't answer from the day before in case I missed something. And I asked it to assess the urgency and I actually compare to see how I think it's urgent or not. And then I have one that just is like an advanced search happened within my company in the last 24 hours that I might need to know. Um, and I didn't know how to schedule that prompt, and I watched somebody do it, and I thought that was really helpful.
I don't have a grand theory on this, but my observation has been that lawyers prefer to learn from other lawyers. And it's part of the reason why I have this podcast. That's why I try to build out the community around it, have events, et cetera, is that I find that lawyers are more open when they're in a room full of other lawyers, and it leads to a really nice exchange of ideas.
I agree with that.
Now, the other E you mentioned, you said education, then you said experimentation. That is one of my favorite words on the podcast. Tell me, how do you achieve experimentation in a legal department in a large corporate?
Yeah, so I'm really fortunate to work for a company and leaders that do see a future in AI and realize how important it is. So they are encouraging AI use. And so I try to use it a lot. And as you said, right now, I think it's adding more time to my workload with the hope that eventually it will create efficiency and cut back on some time on tasks that are repeatable or things like that. The most useful thing that I found it to cut back on time is using it like an advanced search. It can scour facts much faster than I can with citations. And so just the basic factual underpinnings of something that I need to learn is there. And as I said, I've been working a lot on prompting. And I think I'm past that stage now, right? So I've tried to build some agent in a task that is repeatable. Sometimes it fails. Sometimes I get frustrated because I don't know who to ask or how to fix my failed agent, but I think it's a really great idea and it should work, right? And so I spend a lot of time doing that and again, using it across the tools to figure out maybe for an executive summary, tool A is better for me than tool B. And I do like the tools that I've been able to personalize where I say, I like bullets. I like an executive summary first. So that it spits out something that is more ready for me to reuse and review.
Your comments about building agents are very relatable for me. I'm currently working on a short piece for the members section of the version up website where I talk about this. And you're right. It adds to the workload. It creates frictions. It's not
Yeah.
perfect. That is like a huge problem in the short term, but it's something that we all have to go through to achieve, I think, a higher level of proficiency in the long term. Do you think in-house lawyers have an advantage here because they don't have this opportunity cost where every minute not spent is revenue not being generated?
Yes and no. I think it goes back to what we talked about a little bit earlier about personality and what birth work, right? As a junior lawyer in the law firm, I'm a little embarrassed, but not that embarrassed to tell you that when I was learning HSR, I used to carry a printed copy of the rules in my purse so that if anybody came and asked me a question, because sometimes I get questions at 11 p.m. at night, right? I could pull out the HSR rules and answer on the fly. But I was also reviewing in my own time those rules to become an expert. And so I think the same thing sort of happens here, right? I don't have the billable hour pressure as an in-house lawyer. That is true. So I think I can spend more time, but my workload is just as heavy as when I was at a law firm. And that is why a lot of the time, although isn't dinging me on my billables, I still do spend a lot of time learning on my own, like outside of work hours.
I thought of a pocket constitution when you were talking about your rule law. I, but for those in listening in who maybe don't know much about antitrust law, these merger filings are what you file to essentially secure regulatory clearance for a transaction, and they are nitpicky, they are technical, they are also strategic. It's quite tricky, and Mel is the most proficient attorney in this area I have ever met, and now I know the secret. The secret is her pocket HSR rule book.
Yeah, carry around the rules in your purse until you know them.
But what incredible and timeless advice for junior attorneys, because nothing is going to replicate that expertise and knowledge. And if lawyers become completely dependent on an AI tool to tell them about the HSR rules, they will miss things. And those things might have big downsides, or they might miss potential value to offer to their client. And so again, going back to this issue of how do you train lawyers, I think there's going to be this strange kind of inefficiency built in, because at the same time that junior lawyers will be way more efficient using I think mentors and institutions that hire these junior lawyers are going to have to build in non-billed, non-productive time where they are building these foundational blocks.
I agree with that. And I think it using AI to be more efficient, it's against the billable model, right? I mean, if I needed to research for 8 hours because I years ago had to go to the library in the law firm and pick out the book and then read the book, and then it transferred to, oh, there's an online source and then Google search and now AI. All of that cut down your work for the same task, right? But I think it's expected. And, nobody is sitting here typing on a typewriter their brief for the court and going to the library only to review the material. So I do think it needs to change.
hmm for sure. You said billable model with a bit of a stutter. I would have said maybe the 10 commandments of big law. It seems to be etched in stone, this billable hour. But that does make me think of another topic I wanted to explore with you, which is the client law firm relationship. It is changing. How are you seeing AI and innovation within legal corporates impacting your relationship with outside counsel?
I think it's the same way, in my view, that the profession is changing. I think that AI will push more valuable, high thinking work that requires judgment and experience to the law firms, which did what they're doing now, and to, sophisticated in-house counsel. But I do think that for something that AI is very good at, advanced search, for example, there's no reason for a first year to be sitting there researching for 8 hours when the correct prompt could get you the same answer much faster.
I don't know, debate's the right word for it, but there's a lot of talk about corporates insourcing legal work that they would have previously sent to outside counsel. And there's some fear and anxiety about that on the law firm side. I'm curious on what your view is as someone who attains outside counsel, someone who's worked at a law firm. What do you think is the North Star for corporate law firms going forward?
Yeah. And my company has announced the legal edge, and you can look that up. So we have an in-house law firm, let's call it, who focuses on AI work that's repeatable and can use AI. But what I think is, if you're just looking at the numbers, like how many billable hours did my team have at the law firm and did AI shrink that? It probably will in the short term in terms of the tasks, but I'm not sure that if you look at the bigger picture that it will shrink. I'm just not sure. I also think it depends on your relationship and how your company operates. I'm fortunate to have a team of expert antitrust lawyers who have all, worked in other places in the government, in the firms. And so we are antitrust experts. And I think we do it a little different because we work hand in hand with our law firms, and we have a virtual law firm. We don't use just one law firm, we use multiple, and they're expected to work together across our matters and work with us. And so using AI to me is just another tool in our tool belt, and it's just something that we're all doing. And I'm not sure that it's greatly shifted the valuable work.
I haven't quite figured out how to read the developments I see around legal departments insourcing. On the one hand, phrases like AI native, legal departments, et cetera, to me, they can equally ring of like a legal services department, which has existed in-house forever.
Mhm.
The idea being you have high volume, low value work. Some of it was done internally, some of it went to outside counsel. You figure out ways to automate it, AI or otherwise, or you put people on it who have lower labor costs, whatever it might be. That's kind of always been the case. The
Mhm.
same analogy I think could be made for what people call AI native law firms, which sometimes feel like iterations of what we have called alternate legal services providers, ALSPs. That's kind of to me the outside counsel version of what we just talked about, the legal service department. So for me, it often feels like it's on some spectrum and you really have to dig into the weeds and understand what an enterprise is doing to really identify, okay, is this something new and disruptive, or is it just, kind of more of the same, but maybe a little amped up with the help of some technology?
I agree with that. And I think one of your prior podcasts focused on this. I do think that AI has opened up a lot of opportunities for lawyers who might not have had an opportunity. Like my mom always said to me, "Why can't you just hang a shingle?" Like, do you know how hard that is? But I think that with AI, more people can go independent and produce high quality work with less people.
It needs almost its own charm, this concept of like an AI enabled solo practitioner.
Mm.
And it's an interesting concept because we've seen so much consolidation in the legal services market during our careers, Mel. And I don't know, maybe we start seeing some more disaggregation. Maybe we start seeing more people hang up a shingle, even within the corporate premium practice, like antitrust.
Yeah.
Do you think that you and I have a bit of a distorted view of the legal market and the impact of AI, given that we are what I would call more subject matter experts, higher up the value chain, the nature of our work because of the seniority that we're at, and also just the nature of antitrust practice, it tends to be the sort of less repeatable, lower volume, higher value work. Do you think that changes how we think about AI and what it means for our practice and for the industry?
I think yes and no. I think knowing you and myself, uh, I don't think we're thinking about or have a distorted view on what AI could do and how it probably will change the legal profession. What I think is a little bit different right now is that given the work that we do, I am finding it more difficult to find a really great use case that can sort of solve all my problems in my day and be more efficient and run for me and spit out answers. We are not in a black and white world in antitrust, right? It's fact based, but it is also, it depends, right? It's a law of probabilities. Will it substantially lessen competition? Sometimes that's not a judgment that AI tool can make. And so in that sense, I think that is why I'm experimenting so much. What is working, even if it's just some administrative tasks or my advanced search, what I'm calling, those are helpful tasks, but they're not life changing for me right now.
I completely agree with everything you just said. And it has taken me a while to get the confidence to admit that most of my AI usage and value comes from some of these kind of general purpose tools. Like for me, it's Copilot that happens to be the enterprise suite that I'm on in my day job. And people sometimes find it strange that I'm talking about Copilot because they think, oh, it's Microsoft. It must be like Word from like 2001 or something. And I've struggled to understand why I'm in that camp. But what you just said is where I've landed, which is that I feel like the nature of my practice is such that I'm not going out and finding niche tools like due diligence tools or something for like high volume contract analysis or redlining, et cetera. It's just not fitting my practice.
Yeah. Same. And I think eventually something will really help and maybe an agent can help with a playbook or a process that will help with all of the tasks instead of the person always having to do each task. And again, I'm finding use cases that are helpful on the margins right now, but I don't think that or want the AI tool to use my judgment, experience, and client relationship to give an answer, right?
That's fair. I guess I've also, on the same trajectory as you, have moved more towards, instead of trying to find niche tools, move towards trying to build some sort of agents for my own work. I've struggled with that. I've tried to do an internal sort of advisory co-pilot for myself that would essentially take my existing compliance materials and help me advise the business on advisory questions. That poses its own challenges. I've tried to spin up a merger screening tool internally. That poses its own challenges.
Mhm.
And all of them always have the issues you raised earlier, which is it consistent? Does it give a different response a month later? How much maintenance upkeep does it take? To be frank with you, like I'm not succeeding tremendously at it. And I don't know if it's me. I don't know if it's the tools I'm using or whether it's just a limitation in where we are with AI.
Yeah, same. And for me, I think it's a little bit of both plus add on just our antitrust sector, right? I think it is a little bit different.
I think that's true. And so you mentioned Harvey Copilot. Copilot, I call it kind of like a general purpose AI tool. Harvey, I call the legal specific out of the box kind of tool. Any notable differences in how you're using those two? I'm just curious what your views are on the delta and on the outputs. And if you don't want to, call out a specific vendor in particular, we can have the discussion in a more abstract sense by just talking about legal vertical tools versus general purpose tools versus what I call niche tools.
Yeah. I'll talk about it in a more general sense, but I do think some of the features that I have found most helpful, I mentioned before, is when I can personalize, especially for counseling or responses to emails, personalize the tool to the style I write in and the style I want to see. I do not want a 5-page regurgitation of the law. I don't need that. And so something that will give me how I would write back is much more helpful. I love bullet points. I like you, I'm assuming. I write white papers every once in a while, but I do not write briefs every day. I'm not writing paragraphs and pages. I'm sending bullet points and PowerPoints. That's just the style that I have come to, and I think the clients like it. It's easily digestible. So something that does that is much more helpful for me. I experimented with that too, with trying to get the tool to personalize to my likes and spit out output that I enjoy reading. I've done it a couple of ways. I asked the tool to sort of interview me to figure out how I want my responses to be. That took a little bit longer. There were like 30 questions with some subparts. In some of the tools, you can do a remember this, and it's like, remember, I like bullet points. I don't want pages and pages of responses. I'm an antitrust lawyer. I don't need the law regurgitated to me, that sort of thing. And then I do think that some tools, like the legal specific tools I have found are giving better legal analysis, but I do think that gap is closing over time.
Once again, I would love to disagree with you on something, Mel, but I can't. That's completely agree. I've also found that using the legal vertical tools out of the box, they definitely feel and sound like the audience is a 3 to 5 year associate at a law firm. Probably not a surprise given how those products were originally designed and conceived. But I find those answers to be very impractical for an in-house lawyer. So I do find myself trying to get it to be more kind of business friendly, more bottom line driven, et cetera. So for you, that personalization, are those features built into the products you're using, or do you have to somehow come up with a bit of a backdoor to achieve that personalization?
Depends on the tool. So some tools have the personalization, and when the tool does not have it, I build a prompt. At first I was, retyping the same prompt 100 times, copying and pasting, but I think you can save a prompt now in the tools that don't have it. And so I use that background. I give it guardrails. Like, I want you to talk to me like I'm a layperson without the background, but I don't need the regurgitation of the law. It's for a business person. Create a concise summary, that sort of thing. So I give it all the rules in the prompt I'm asking it to give me.
Cool. Yeah. Talking about education, on my to-do list is building some skills off of Claude because I just saw last week that Copilot can now run skills. And so again, I'm on Copilot on my enterprise suite. So I just sit around and wait for things like that to happen. So I think skills might be an interesting thing to explore on that personalization front.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're talking about is it's called different things in different tools, but that's essentially what it is. It remembers how you like things to be done and who you are or who your audience is.
Very interesting. So, Mel, what's next? What do you want to do that you haven't been able to do yet, either because of time limitations, resource constraints? What's on your wish list for the rest of 2026 when it comes to AI and legal tech?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's more education, and I do want to figure out how to build some sort of agent that is successful in even laying out the steps of my playbook so that instead of me searching for the documents I need or writing out every step, I have, 5 steps and I just need to upload the document and it gets me what I need in the playbook. But again, I haven't been wildly successful yet with a use case and get the agent to do that even with the simple use case I tried to do.
So you're envisioning a point-to-point, end-to-end solution.
Yeah. Like with multiple steps, you get a CID, you have to track it, you go to the next step. Who's this me? Um, Actually, that's something else in-house. I don't know if you experience this. Finding the expert on a question. Sometimes I receive a question and I didn't even know our company did that, right? And so, of course, I don't know the person who's responsible for that area. Um, and so SME finders I've seen, and just having really good SME finders, I think would save a lot of time for me.
That actually goes to the main last topic I wanted to cover, which is it's almost like the third rail of legal tech, which is the data question, the data layer, the intelligence layer, connectivity of your AI tool to the right data. Huge, huge challenge. I think one that's finally being acknowledged by the industry. These tools really don't do what we need them to do unless they are connected to the right information and data. And for me, building agents, that's been one challenge, is being able to give it the data that it needs. Can you share your experience on that front? You mentioned tapping into your org chart, essentially. What are some other ways that you have succeeded or not at building something that requires proprietary internal data to work?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's the reason my agents aren't working the way that I would like them to as well. But also, I think right now for an agent to work in the area that we work in, it's still going to be small scale because you need to put the data somewhere, right? Or connect it to that data, and it's small scale, like go review these 500 documents. But I had to go put those 500 documents likely in a folder first. So being connected to the system would be great, but obviously not in my area. There's security issues and all of that too. Even on a personal level, I volunteer for a rescue organization for dogs, and I started experimenting with Gemini, like the paid version of Gemini, because I wanted it to just do a really simple task where a available dog list gets sent out to the approved adopters, and then I send it out to the volunteers just so they know which dogs are available, but I need to delete all of the contact information for the foster because only the approved adopters should know that information. And there are some graphics in the email, and I thought because I have the paid version of Gemini and use Gmail and have an Android, that it could take my available dog list email every week, copy and paste it into a new email and remove the contact information. That seems like very basic, but it told me that it can't do that. I was just really surprised because that seems like the most basic sort of like agent workflow. Take an email you have, delete this very specific information and keep the graphics. And it told me it couldn't keep the graphics and couldn't access my Gmail.
Okay, so now I have another vertical I have to add to the version up empire, which is version up hackathon. The first hackathon, this is going to be the challenge, is fix this problem for Mel.
Yeah.
Help her find safe, comfortable homes for these dogs. I think that's a very worthy mission.
Yeah, any AI examples you want to give me, I will take.
Going back to the example we've used, merger screening tool, what I found is it's not hard to spin up an agent that does the analysis and gives you the right level of detail in the output and automates everything. What's really challenging is what is your knowledge source? How do you give it the equivalent of 120 mels, right? For every jurisdiction that's out there that has a merger screening requirement, a lot of that has to do with case law and decisions and guidelines and things that aren't on the open web. And so what that tells me is there's going to be certain use cases where just the data issue should push you towards maybe not building that whole thing internally. Because, for example, a global law firm that does thousands of filings a year across the world is going to have already a very robust source of information. So do you pay the law firm for access to that? Does the law firm give it to you as a freebie? I don't know. But it certainly does not make sense for a typical corporate to go and create that universe of information and insight and expertise.
I agree with that. And just on the merger screening tool, I mean, the other question is the law. I agree the law firm has the better data set, but that also involves commingling across client information, right? It's internal, I'm sure, but that's one question. Are clients okay with that? Did the law firm think about that? So it just creates a lot of issues. That is the better data set, but there are probably caveats to that.
No, it's a great point. It's a great point. I know of some law firms that have a dedicated person whose only job is to scour the web, to maintain relationships with local counsel, to do everything in their power to keep an up-to-date resource internally at the law firm on what are the merger filing requirements. A dedicated staff person to maintaining that data. That is an extremely powerful resource that law firm has. And I hope that they are seeing that, utilizing it, and making it available to their clients.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's also a really good example of something that's AI like. Is that generative AI? It's probably not, but to me, it's more how I use AI tools for advanced search, right? When I was a junior lawyer at the law firm, I would get hundreds of jurisdictions with revenue from my client to do the multi-jurisdictional analysis. I'd have to convert all of that currency into the same currency. Then I'd have to go look up the thresholds for 100 jurisdictions, make sure the thresholds I had were still up to date, right? And you do that, and that could take days to get the analysis done. A tool that could do that could save a lot of time, and it goes back to that billable hour versus high value work. Was it really valuable for me to convert currencies and go to the European Bank website and know where all of the jurisdictional thresholds were? It was good to learn and to understand what I was doing to get to the analysis. But spending 8 hours converting currencies and looking up a threshold, maybe not the best use of a lawyer's time.
Totally agree. And another topic I'm working on for the member section, a version of that AI, is to check in on where are we in this whole AI transformation thing in law. And the bottom line is we are not as far along as people probably thought we would be. A lot of progress has been made. A lot of progress is happening, but there are a lot of reasons why the progress is going to be more jagged and more uneven across the legal sector than maybe some of the more utopian viewpoints might have suggested.
I agree with that. I mean, there is a huge learning curve here. And as you mentioned before, people don't like change, especially if they think it's going to disrupt their livelihoods. And so you have to deal with pushback on that. But I do think AI is here. AI will change the legal industry. It will help in some way, even if we're not there yet.
And lawyers are here and they're going to be here.
I agree. As I said, I really do not think that an AI tool can or should replace our judgment, our experience, and our client relationships. And that is the human factor that it really just can't do.
Hear, hear. Mel, I am encouraged. I'm emboldened. I'm comforted by this conversation, the path that you're on, and the sort of concerted, really thoughtful way that you go about it. Thank you for coming on the podcast to share that with the audience.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for your podcast. I found it really informational.
Hopefully when you're asking AI for podcast recommendations,
yours
someone comes up. Oh, that's amazing.
It did.
Thanks, Mel.
Thank you.